User interface design is both an analysis and a design activity. It has many aspects of analysis because it is a discovery process to understand the user's needs. It is also a design activity because it leads directly into implementation of display pages or screens and reports. User interface design is the primary element in the total user experience. User interface design is not an exact science. There are many options and perspectives which can influence the final design. Nevertheless, in this video, we will review a few of the more important and basic considerations for designing effective and efficient user-friendly pages and screens. The first consideration we discuss is the idea of affordance. Affordance means that a control or an object placed on a display screen will actually look like the function it performs. In other words, the visual image of the control implies a function. Today there are many controls that we have become familiar with. Probably the most familiar are those that are used in video playback windows. Their shape and form are easy to discern. In this image we see several. The big triangle in the middle, which has the appearance of an arrowhead, means go, or play, or start. The square box implies a hard stop. It looks a little bit like a wall or an impediment. It stops movement. The small speaker with sound waves implies the sound volume. Other icons may not be so obvious, and it is only with repeated use that we finally have become familiar with them. The small grid with 9 rectangles does not necessarily imply anything. However, as we use it, we learn that it implies choices or other options. The crisscross arrows take some thinking, but we finally discern it means shuffle or mixing things up. Related to the idea of affordance are the twin concepts of visibility and feedback. Visibility means that the control is visible and placed in a location that is intuitive to find. On this picture, the radio boxes are placed right in the middle of the image and very easy to see. As the user selects different options, not only does the radio box circle itself change colors, but the embedded image at the bottom of the display changes. It changes its image to show a theater or living room or stadium. This is a great example of both visibility and feedback. There is immediate feedback to the user to know what is meant by each of the 3 radio buttons. Audio feedback can also be provided with clicking noises or even a short audio clip with the different sounds. An example of visibility and feedback from the previous image is the tooltip text box that appears as the mouse hovers over a control. These two principles of visibility and feedback usually go together and are critically important for good user interface design. Another key principle is consistency. What do we mean by the term consistency? Consistency in the user interface means that the controls across the different views are the same. They look the same and they act the same. Also, consistency means that controls, icons, text boxes, images, and so forth are placed on the display in the same location. Consistency means that the same set of controls are used for each view as much as is appropriate. We could even go so far as saying that the same color schemes and themes are used across different views. Productivity and usefulness are much better if the user does not have to figure out what is going on with each new page or each new display screen. There are 3 levels of consistency that designers should remember and apply. One level of consistency is across platforms. In today's computing environment, users will view their applications on many different platforms. By platforms, we mean the different devices such as Windows versus Apple versus Unix. Different platforms also means viewing an app or on a laptop versus a tablet or a smartphone. Sometimes this is a challenge because the icons, symbols, and development tools are different on each platform. At times, developers may need to forego the use of nifty controls because they would make the application too inconsistent. Another level of consistency is across a suite of applications. There are many software companies that not only sell a single software application but also have a suite of related software apps. Most of these now have become more consistent across the suite. A good example is Microsoft Office. As the users go from Word to Excel to PowerPoint to Access, they notice that the ribbon of controls along the top of the application window is the same. This is a great example of consistency within a suite. The final level of consistency is within a single application. By this we mean the controls, the menu items, the page layout, and even the color scheme are all similar from screen to screen. As before, the user should not have to learn an entirely new screen layout on different views within an application. One principle related to consistency is that of continuity. By continuity, we mean that principle of keeping the application consistent across versions or releases over time. Sometimes this principle cannot be maintained because new functions are added or new technology is available. However, a smooth migration path into new functions or technology is usually better. Here is an example of non-continuity that has caused some frustration with Windows users. Microsoft changed the entire look and feel of the Windows operating system from Windows 7 to Windows 8. Due to the higher usage of mobile devices such as tablets, Microsoft decided to integrate and combine the features of both desktop computers and mobile computers. Unfortunately, it was a big leap for users to go from the desktop view with the Start button and taskbar along the bottom to the Start screen with tiles and scrollable views and Metro apps. In fact, Microsoft backed up a little bit with the new release of Windows 8.1, which made it easier to find and use the desktop view in classic programs. Another helpful technique for good user interface design is the principle of discoverability. This is especially important when designing screens for smaller devices. Often it is impossible to have all the controls visible on the screen at the same time. There may not be enough room, or perhaps they make the screen too cluttered and busy. They become a distraction instead of a help. The purpose of discovery is to help users find these other features and functions. Most of us have used applications, sometimes for a long time, and then discovered a new feature that we were completely unaware of. A good designer tries to make sure that users can easily find all the features. In this figure there are two examples of discoverability. Both of these happen to be clickable options. The blue icons, the word music to the left and the blue microphone to the right, both imply that they are clickable. By clicking on them, pop-up menus or options appear and allow the user to invoke additional features. Active discovery means that the screen includes hover actions and pop-ups or tools that encourage the user to check out these new features. Another user interface design principle is that of closure. The principle of closure is not as obvious in the design as other principles. It is more subtle, but is just as important. By closure, we mean all those actions and design to allow the users to know that they have completed a task and that their work is saved and protected. Many times closure can be provided from the other principles such as feedback or visibility. For example, when I click the Save icon on Microsoft Word, I see the writing bar along the bottom indicate the completion of the action. I have closure. Sometimes a task has a sequence of steps, and closure doesn't occur until the end of the sequence. Buying something on Amazon requires several steps to fill the shopping cart, to entering information, to payment, and finally approving everything. When I finish my purchase, Amazon displays the sale file screen as well as sending me an email. I have closure. Another aspect of closure is protecting the user's work. Sometimes when the user enters information and tries to submit the data, it fails due to some validation error. We all have worked on an application where we had to go back and re-enter all of our information again. This is not a good practice. The system should save the user's work. If a user has entered something into the computer, then the system should remember it. Finally, the undo feature is also an important part of closure. Undo should apply both to the work that is performed and to navigation through a series of pages or screens. Readability. Sometimes we like to get fancy in designing a web page or a screen and use fancy scripts or colors. However, this can cause serious problems for many users. There is not much to say here except that be sure your text is readable, not too small, not too fancy, not the wrong color. Dark backgrounds tend to be hard to read even with light-colored lettering. Similar colors or contrasting colors are also difficult. This announcement page is almost impossible to read. Finally, navigation. Navigation through a series of screens or pages should be clear and easy to follow. Sometimes there is a progress bar at the top of the page to show which step the user is on. Sometimes a continue button indicates how to move to the next step. These are good design techniques. As part of navigation, there should always be a way to go back. A navigation path at the top of the page is a good technique. In Windows Explorer, the path through the folders is easily seen in the top text box, and each folder is also a hot link so the user can return to any level of the path. Sometimes this is referred to as breadcrumb navigation. Finally, also consider that there will be novice users as well as experienced users. Novices like lots of menu selections and instructions. Experienced users like shortcuts with a minimum of hand movements and keystrokes. Error messages should also be well designed. A good error message will indicate the location of the error, such as which text box is wrong or missing, indicate what the error is, and indicate what the fix is or what the user needs to do to correct it. Finally, as with all designs, simpler is always better.